So last week I made this little reducer. It was the first time I've ever brazed anything before, and with that considered, I guess it went about as well as I hoped it would have. But honestly, I did a pretty crappy job and it's pretty ugly. So I wanted to improve, I wanted to do better, and you guys helped me out a whole lot last week. So this week, I want to share with anyone else that's wanting to learn how to braze all the tips that you guys gave me. And I want to show you guys the progress that I've made with all the awesome help that you gave me. Hey guys, welcome to Still It. This is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. So if you're new here, have a look around. If you're into this sort of thing, this might just be the channel for you. So have a think about hitting the subscribe button down below. Alright guys, so like I said, this week I want to share all of the tips that were given to me over the last sort of week or two. And I want to do that for two reasons. First, if you're new to this hobby as well, and especially if you're new to brazing, I want to give you guys the help that I've been given. Second, I kind of want to show my appreciation and give a few props to the people that helped me out, and also show you that I am actually trying to put into action the stuff that you guys are giving me. So first up, I want to run through those comments. Like always guys, if you commented on the video, I'll show a clip of it and use your name. If you commented on the forums or on Reddit, I'll leave your name out of it, and if you guys want to be mentioned, let me know. Okay, so Lindsay gave me a bunch of really cool tip pointers, as you can see here, but what I really want to point out is that last thing that he said, number 6. Sometimes I do forget about just enjoying it, and honestly for me, this hobby and pretty much any other hobby I'm into, it's not about the result, it's about just enjoying myself and learning something as I go about it. So thanks a bunch, dude, for the awesome feedback and for the tips, but thanks for reminding me just to enjoy it as I go, because I was getting a little bit stressed out about the fact that it wasn't working. Thanks, man. I also got a bunch of really solid advice like this on soft soldering. I think that soft soldering and brazing are the two, like really the only two options for this sort of thing for newbies with limited amount of tools. Like obviously going out and getting a TIG setup just isn't accessible. So I want to try soldering as well. I'm gonna do that because I think that it would be really cool to get it on video and compare what it's like for a newbie like me to try both and see which is most accessible to learn quickly. Okay, so this guy here is always at the top of the list for commenting first and giving me solid advice. I appreciate it, dude. I also really appreciate the tip of doing the inside rather than the outside. I imagine that would keep it really neat, and I think if I was doing a larger gauge, I would have done that for sure. I didn't trust myself to get in there with the 2-inch, especially with the longer pieces, but I think it might be something I want to explore later on down the road. Thanks, man. Honestly, I was wondering how to get the most use out of the brazing rods and use every little bit too. So thanks for the comment on that. And it was expanded on by Reese. Thanks for the detailed instructions. That makes a whole lot of sense and sounds a whole lot less fidgety than what I imagined when it was first mentioned. Also, I would love to upgrade my torch, but I just don't see that on the cards right now. At this point in time, I'd rather spend any extra money I have on parts that are actually going to go into the still just to make sure I'm up and running as quick as possible. Also, from a pure content point of view, I think it's kind of cool to do it on bare bones in terms of tools, just to show everyone else that it is possible and that they can do it too. I guess it's the same deal with the pipe cutter. Honestly, I think I would probably get a pipe cutter before anything else at this stage in terms of tools, because I think I'm going to be using it a lot. So I'll look into that more, dude. Stuff for us here in New Zealand is kind of expensive unless I can find it secondhand. As always, I also got a bunch of really good feedback and tips and tricks from the two forums, New Zealand Home Distiller and Home Distiller, on Facebook and on Reddit. So I wanted to share those with everyone else as well, just in case there's people out there that can benefit from these tips and tricks as well. Probably one of the most important tips that I got was in terms of the materials I was using. First up was to get hold of some twink, the correction fluid, whatever you want to call it, and to use that to paint onto the copper, which would basically stop the braze sticking anywhere that you put it on. So it's really good for making a nice tidy braze. Second was to get some real flux. The stuff I used last time just came in a benzomatic kit, and it's really just meant for soft solder. As someone explained to me, that stuff boils at 100 degrees and the brazing rod melts way higher than that. So the stuff I was using was no help at all. This stuff, on the other hand, is specifically designed for Pro Silver. I also had a bunch of people helping me out and explaining that I needed to use the heat to move the brazing material around and not use the rod itself like a paintbrush, if that makes sense. I guess I was starting to get the hang of that near the end of last week, but all of the awesome comments kind of really drove that home, and I wanted to work on that a lot this week. I also got a bunch of reminders to make sure that I put the work in a citric acid bath after I was finished to help get rid of any of that extra flux. Someone else also pointed out that I should really be sanding the stainless as well. It's a really highly mirrored surface, and just to prepare it for brazing, it really is a good idea to actually scuff the surface up. It was also noted that I wasn't really sure of when the material was at the right temperature to start brazing, so I was given the suggestion to just touch the rod onto the material, onto the copper or the stainless, to test it and see if it melts. And if it doesn't melt straight away, back off, keep heating, and just wait for a little bit. After a bit of feedback, it also became painfully obvious that I was kind of jumping all over the place last week and not just methodically working my way around. Turns out that seems like it's pretty important, so I wanted to focus on doing that this week too. Getting it right, taking my time, and just moving all the way around rather than jumping all over the place. I also got a little bit confused between soft solder and brazing, I think, for some of the techniques that I was trying to use. For example, last week I was trying to use indirect heat a lot and keep the torch away from the joint, which is not a good idea for brazing. So thanks for the people that pointed that out to me, and I think that made things a whole lot easier. Okay guys, so this week I had 4 ferrules that needed putting onto copper, the top and the bottom of the column and either side of the elbow. I'm not going to make you sit through every one of those joins. I'll show you some clips from here and there on parts where I think I made mistakes, parts where I think I did well, and then I'll go along and show the finished product for all of them. So I knew after a little bit of discussion with a few people that I wanted my column, the initial column anyway, to be a little bit longer than I initially planned. So the first job was to mark it up, measure it, and cut it down to size. I cleaned the crap out of it inside and out, especially where I knew it was going to join, and like I said before, I took the advice and sanded the stainless steel down as well. I didn't do that last week. I've had a fair bit of advice over the last week saying that it is totally cool to use heaps of this flux. I don't know if this is heaps or not, so let me know. Anyway, next step was to put the copper onto the ferrule. Because of my crappy hacksawing skills, I wasn't sure that everything was totally plumb. So I decided the easiest way was to set up a bob hanging from the ceiling, mark a guideline around the outside of the ferrule here, and then be able to put this inside the piece of copper, the column, just to make sure that I had a relatively good idea that everything was square and true. Turns out that it wasn't. So I just used a little bit of persuasion, making sure not to hit directly on the copper, as was also pointed out to me, just to persuade things into alignment. Like I said earlier, I also picked up some correction fluid to use on the copper to keep things nice and tidy. Essentially the idea is anywhere you put the correction fluid or the twink, the braze will not stick to or flow to. I don't know why I put it on the stainless. That was a mistake. Anyway, on to brazing. You guys don't want to see 4 of these though, so let's skip through the first one. I guess it went pretty well, but we'll have a closer look at the second one. So clean the copper, and I decided that it was probably smarter to do the twinking now. Sand the stainless. Flux the stainless, put the copper onto the ferrule, check that everything's plumb and true, and start brazing. So like I said before, I took the advice of testing the braze rod on the copper
quickly to see if it was at melting point. And I wanted to take this first little bit super slow and kind of have a play with seeing how I could get the braze material to move around the copper using the heat. So I was aiming the torch right at the join, making sure that the stainless was nice and hot, and then moving the heat up the copper to try and draw it up into the join. And now looking at this, I can actually see the braze disappearing under that lip and being drawn up into the joint, which from what I understand is pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. I know for someone who's experienced, this is probably painfully slow, but like I said, I think this time I just really wanted to take my time and kind of experiment and really watch and learn how the braze material moved. At this point, I started to pick up speed and just actually join it. I won't show you the part around the back where you can't see, so I'll skip around to this side. Right about here, I realized that not only could I use the heat of the torch to pull the braze to where the heat was, but I could also actually kind of use the force of the flame to help push it across a part where it didn't really want to go, which I found very useful at the end for cleaning up, like this little bit here. So there you have it, guys. This was the third time I've ever brazed stainless to copper, and I guess at this point here I was actually feeling pretty good about it, and I'd sort of decided that I was actually going to be able to do this and that it was going to work. I think looking at it now, I may have got that last little bit a little bit too hot, but overall I'm pretty happy with that joint. So I did the next two ferrules for the elbow, gave them all a bath in citric acid and water, gave them a nice little scrub up so I can show them off to you. This is the first joint that I did this week. Here's the second, the other side of the column, the one that you watched most of. Here's the third joint that I did this week, one end of the elbow. For some reason I decided that I should see if I could do this upside down, so the ferrule facing up and the copper on the underside. It still worked, it's still waterproof, but it's definitely not as neat as the others. And this is the last brazing that I did this week. This is the other end of the elbow join.
Okay guys, there we go. That's 4 joins and 4 successes. They're all watertight and they definitely look a whole lot better than the originals. So to those of you that have been helping me, thanks a bunch, guys. I really appreciate it. For those of you that are new, I hope this kind of shows what it might be like the first time you try this out and kind of where you can expect to be after a little bit of practice. And I hope the hints, the tips, the tricks help you guys out too. So thanks a bunch for watching, guys. If you liked the video, like it. If you really like it, have a think about hitting subscribe down below, and I'll see you next time. See ya.